All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome in to our amazingly awesome panel about working in the arts. My name is DJ UltraPup, aka DJ Jake Maxwell. I am joined today by two amazing panelists. We had, unfortunately, had to make a last-minute replacement, but that is okay because we are going to roll with the punches. But I'm going to introduce each of them first and let them talk a little bit about themselves. So first and foremost, Strypz, if you just want to introduce yourselves and tell people about what you do and who you are and, get to know everybody.
Hey guys, my name is Strypz. I'm a photographer and videographer. I'm a YouTuber, and I just haven't. I'm also a DJ. I wear many hats. So, but yeah, I've been really excited about this panel, and I'm looking forward to sharing some information with you guys during this panel that you may not have thought about, or some questions that you may have had. So yeah. That's a short little thing about me. We'll get more detailed into it during the panel.
Very, very good. So you may have noticed that our good friend Nick Nocturne is not with us. As we said, Nick unfortunately was not able to make it, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But filling in for Nick is one of our very good friends, and you may notice him in the Tech Command Center. This is Elevative. So Elevative, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
It's good. It's good. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do?
Well, geez. I've done a lot of DJing stuff. I've probably been DJing for about six years now. I started doing like bigger stuff as of 3 years ago. However, this last year I actually stopped DJing for the specific purpose of working more on like music production aspects and like event design, because I'm kind of a nerd. As you can see, I'm kind of part of the whole command center stuff, but yeah.
Very, very good. So we want to encourage everybody, if you have questions during the panel, to please drop them in the chat. We are monitoring them. This will be a much more enjoyable experience if everybody asks questions. We have some pre-submitted ones, but we definitely want to hear from you. What I'm going to do first, though, is I'm going to actually read a statement that was submitted to us from Nick Nocturne that he asked us to read directly to everybody. So I'm going to do that in my super monotone voice, which I'm sure you guys are going to love because I am super energetic. So here we go. So, yeah, as you can tell, we're off to the races with my energy levels through the roof. So Nick says, "Hey there, Furpocalypse. Sorry I couldn't show, but the reasons for it actually go into the criteria I had on the list of things I would offer for what to expect and how to conduct yourself working in the arts. Also, this is a great tactic to bully UltraPup into seeing how he can match up against me as an orator in my absence, isn't it? Haha, gotcha. But seriously, first up, something you probably heard a lot this year, I will 100% attest is true, is working in the arts, especially full-time, will often have you under a mindset that you can and will tackle anything and everything, and you'll do whatever you need to later in paying your body's sleeping and self-care bills. First tip, don't do stuff like that. And we're going to touch on that in a moment. Because it could cost you an appearance at your own panel when the marathon pacing catches up with you and it's time to pay the Sandman. Since the beginning of Nightmind back in 2015, I've had a lot, and I really do mean a lot, of occasions in which I've pushed myself beyond the normal hours I should be awake and shortchanged myself on sleep, and over time I've come to realize that sleep tight shouldn't just be my sign-off phrase on videos, it should be genuine advice that I follow. TLDR version, I got too sick to get on the mic for an extended period of time for this panel and had to go back to bed because I pushed way too much overtime and tried to resume after about 3 hours of sleep, but the effects are, as you can guess, terrible. As creators, we are excited go-getter people, and that's awesome. We'll take on the world when we want to and add the moon into the mix when someone asks, but we ignore our own physical needs at our own peril. In order to function at the maximum efficiency and even at a good minimum, we need to pay attention to our needs and make sure they are tended to. If that's sleep, you have to get it. If it's food, you need to take a break and eat. If you just need a good 30 minutes to an hour of silence, you need to do that too. Ultra and Strypz and Elevative, I'm sure all three of you have stories of when you run yourselves down to the point of having learned this kind of lesson, right? Everybody in the creative field has one. So I'll open the floor to you first, Strypz, if you want to talk on that just a bit.
Oh, definitely. And ironically, I'm kind of sort of going through the same thing because I was up last night till like 3 a.m. editing a video that I was trying to release today on YouTube, and then went to bed and then woke up at 6:30 so that I could go vote early. So I'm running on like 2 hours of sleep and haven't taken a nap or anything like that. And I know I'm dropping frames really hard. I'm sorry. It's been something that I don't know what's been going on, but I know I'm dropping frames. But anyway, I totally understand pushing yourself too hard, because I am a perfectionist, especially when it comes down to my art and the way I want it presented. And I will work and work and work and work and work until my body's just like, no, you need to sit down and stop. And you should never let your body get to that point, because that is, like Nick said, not a healthy place to be, in the slightest. So definitely take time, rest, and listen to, because your body will give you early warning signs. Listen to those early warning signs and then step back and then come back with your feet on the ground after you've rested.
Elevative, do you have a story about a time when you've kind of gotten run down or had to learn a lesson about monitoring and self-care with the arts?
So it's really funny that this is actually like one of the questions, because kind of as I stated, like I guess for doing DJing stuff prior, as I mentioned, I'm kind of doing a break this year. Last year I did more events than I ever had before, and it was starting to get to the point to where I wasn't enjoying, like I was legitimately getting to the point to where I just wasn't enjoying DJing anymore, because after, you know, taking this break that I was talking about, I've kind of come to find out that I actually get a lot of anxiety like before shows, and I just never accepted or realized it at that point. But at the beginning of this year, before COVID actually happened, I decided, you know, I'm not going to do anything this year. I'm just going to solely work on like creative vision and design. And it has been great so far. Kind of as I stated, I've been working on music production. And because like it takes a lot to get to the point of creating tracks to where they're at a level that you want to release them. And I was never able to do that while I was, you know, DJing however many, like 10, 15 events a year that were um, you know, at a good size, because I would just get anxiety about it like all the time, because and then that anxiety in return gets to the point to where it's like I can't be creative in the studio, because I'm just kind of worrying about that as, oh, I need to go work on this instead of be creative in the studio or try and do something unique. So um, I'm actually kind of currently living, I guess, an experience like that, where I am taking that time off, and it's made me more creative than I have been, due to just removing a lot of that stress that had been starting to build up that I never addressed before.
So to follow up on that, when you made that decision, did you find it difficult to kind of make that overarching, like, you know, this is what I need to do for myself, or like, was it kind of just an easy decision you just pulled the trigger on?
Um, I guess it kind of goes 50-50. I mean, yeah, it sucks because I was doing it kind of exactly at the right time to where it wasn't super hard to do it, because of course, you know, COVID happened. So this is kind of the perfect year to take a break, is what ended up happening. But there was like a couple of shows that I did where they just didn't, I wasn't feeling my A game, and I just wasn't having fun at them. And so I just decided like maybe, and the idea of taking a break had been in my mind for a year. So it wasn't that hard of a decision, I guess, to say. It's just like, you know, let's do the break. Let's take a year. You know, I usually did a lot of Brony conventions, and, you know, BronyCon ended and all the big stuff. So I'm just kind of like, let's take that break, focus on music production, and to be like you start to get that like unique creativity back. Um,
Cool. So guys have probably noticed that are watching. We are three DJ related artists. The intent is to cover a bunch of different things. So we are going to do our best, but unfortunately it ended up being 3 DJs and Strypz. So we are gonna do we are gonna do a great job. So anyways, Strypz, pivoting to you real quick. I'll talk about you because you and your blue hair. Which, by the way, is it a requirement to have blue hair like to be a DJ? Because like I've got blue hair, you've got blue hair. We're gonna give Elevative blue hair. So is that like a thing that we're doing here?
No, it is not a requirement to have blue hair to be in the arts field, whether it is a DJ, videographer, photographer. It's not a requirement, but if you can have blue hair or colored hair, it does make the job a lot more fun.
So in all seriousness, going to you, aside from being a DJ, you are also a photographer. You actually took my photographs, some of my promotional product photographs, and I work with you quite regularly. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you got started in that? Is that a full-time job as well as your videography? And if that's something you want to do full-time, and just kind of the struggles and the ups and downs of what that's been like.
So I kind of started everything all at once around when I was 13 years old. So currently my full-time job is a warehouse manager for a office furniture installation company, but I would love to do production full-time. That is my dream. That is my goal. It has been my dream and goal since I was 13 years old when I got into this. I got my start doing live sound and live lightboard operation. And from there, I had always dabbled in photography. Like my whole life, I'd really always been drawn to cameras. And my one of my the people who I was around saw that I had a natural eye for photography. And so he was just like, hey, we want to make you a photographer for this organization. And I was like, cool, thinking, I'm just going to get to use my little point and shoot camera and it's all going to be all good. And they ended up purchasing a DSLR. So I had to teach myself how to photograph in manual mode and really hone my skills as a photographer. And around that same time, because I was running the sound booth and the light booth, I was also ended up getting drafted into running the video switcher. So I ended up getting into video editing from there. And because photography and videography, at least from a behind the camera standpoint, are very, very similar, I took those up around the same time. And so now I've been a part of the production industry for going on 14 years. And like I said, I really would love to do this full time. I run my own YouTube channel called Very Unusual, as well as, like Ultra mentioned, I do photography as well. And with that, my specialty is on-location photography with studio lighting, which is a very, very niche market, but it ends up giving you some really, really cool results as long as you know what you're doing. And then also, I did get into DJing a few years after I got into photography and videography. And I started out doing a lot of events, but they were mostly like luncheons and parties. So I was playing a lot of music that I wasn't really passionate about. And I stepped back from DJing for years, and I got back into it once I started really getting into EDM. And now the main genres I play are Melbourne Bounce, Psytrance, hard Psy, and hard style, because that's what I absolutely love. And as a DJ, if you are not passionate about the music you're playing, then you're going to be miserable on stage. And I think that also goes into photography and videography. If you are miserable with the content that you're making, then you're going to be miserable at the job you're doing.
Those are all very, very good points. So,
and I know I'm still lagging bad.
It's fine. We're going to roll up the punches here. It's, we're going to make it the best we can do. So to both of you, and I guess myself as well, would you guys say that this is a thing working in an arts field where you can just kind of expect to be successful overnight? Because I feel like some people look at what DJs or artists or photographers or videographers or YouTubers do, and they sometimes think that they're going to start a channel or they're going to become a DJ, and then within a month they're going to be super famous and well known. And so I guess my question is, to those people or to anyone who has questions, what advice would you say about expectations about how quickly you can climb up the ranks in your field and how much work and effort you need to put in? We'll go to you first, Elevative.
Oh man, that's kind of I'm very realist, so it's a hard question, just kind of put it softly. I guess, of course, there's always a saying like, hope for the best, expect the worst, is usually is always the best mindset you can really be in, because today there's so many outlets and so many people out there that are doing the same thing, if not very similar things, that to get anywhere, you really have to you have to have a really good creative, like artistic drive, and be unique. That's there's a you can throw a you can throw a stick of butter out the window and find any generic house DJ, but if you want to become big, you need to find like that special spin on a style to become unique. And then you really need to, the thing about with this kind of an industry too, is it's not the kind of thing where you can do it once in a while and get big. You have to work really, really hard, and you have to do, in the beginning, it's extremely hard because you have to do everything. As a lot of, as the other guys in this Strypz, yeah, as Strypz has said in here too, like hello, where he's like, he mentioned he's into photography and production, like all that kind of stuff too. A lot of DJs that have become successful or bigger, you'll notice, have kind of a very similar drive or passions, where they're also into photography, videography, stuff like that. Because in the beginning, you don't have the money or somebody to like do photography of you or to work on like a website or stuff like that. But in today's industry, you kind of like have to have that to get far. I always tell people who are getting into DJing, like, while like when you get into DJing, like your passion and your creative drive is in the music, but to actually make it in the industry, it's 50-50 between your skills, your artisticness, and 50% like like doing your own marketing and how like what's your marketability, like are you taking photos, are you putting your content out there in a repetitive fashion, reaching out to the masses of people, just kind of getting out there, I guess. Doing like management, you have to do all your bios, you have to make demo mixes and try and get accepted to all these places. And there's a lot of work that has to go into it. But now a lot of that kind of talk can scare a lot of people away, of course. But I don't want to do that. If you really do have the artistic drive and passion to do something like that, then take it as kind of something constructive to get on top of it if you do want to get into the industry of, realizing that there is a lot more than just doing the music, to do something like DJing and getting into it, I guess. I didn't really think I was going to get that kind of a question. It's kind of a deep question, but there's a lot of stuff that does go into it.
No,
You handled it well. You did good.
Excuse me. I 100% agree. If you come into this expecting to get big overnight because you've seen somebody else get big overnight, then it is the wrong reason to get into it. Like I said, I've been part of the industry for 14 years and I still haven't made it big. And it really is about consistency, marketing, but also a little bit of luck, because a lot of these people who have made it big just so happen to get lucky. They just so happen to get noticed by the right person at the right time, or they happen to put out the right video or the right song at the right time. And with that little bit of luck, it catapulted them. But for the other 90% of people who are in the arts, it is a grind. It is hard work to get to what you want. And especially in videography, in the world of YouTube and TikTok, as well as in the DJ world, it is extremely hard to stand out unless you are doing something that is special. Because if you're doing what everybody else is doing, then you're gonna fade into the background. So it's about finding that balance between doing what everybody else is doing so that you can please the SEO, or so that you can please the algorithm, because you do, in the internet age that we live in, you do have to make the algorithm happy. You have to make daddy YouTube happy. You have to make daddy SoundCloud happy. But you also, while still playing with that algorithm, you have to do something that is different while still being the same. And I know that sounds oxymoronic, but there is a way to do it. For instance, like with my YouTube videos, I was one of the few furry YouTubers who film on green screen. And it was something that set me apart. So yes, I'm, getting on camera in my fursuit and I'm making furry related content, but having that little extra pop of the green screen was something that set me apart, and was something that helped drive people to my content. And I think for me, the creativity is not the hard part, it's the self-promotion. I have a very, very hard time promoting myself. And Ultra and I are very, very good friends, and he can tell you I will sit there and promote everybody else all day long. I will sit there and build everybody else up all day long, but when it comes to promoting myself, it is the hardest thing for me. And if I had have started buckling down with self-promotion earlier, I think that I would have made it bigger sooner, because I'm now, because of the self-promotion I'm doing, I'm starting to gain a following. I'm starting to gain traction now, especially on YouTube, because over the last year, I've gone from just having 300 subscribers to almost doubling that to 600. I'm currently sitting at 577 subs. And a year ago, I was just at 300. So that consistency, as well as the self-promotion, in a year's time, I've seen double the growth. And so now I just have to double down and continue to do that, and also continue to stand out from the crowd.
So I think both of you guys have interesting perspectives on it. And yes, as Elevative said, it's a hard question, right? Because nobody wants to dash anybody's dreams. Like, no one wants to, that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. Like, nobody wants to be like, no, don't do this. Like, there's a 0.0001 chance you're going to make it. Because that's not what we're saying. I think, I'll talk about from my own experiences. It's going in with a realistic mindset, right? So not going into it thinking that you're going to be super successful about putting in the hard work. Like, this, you can get to where you want to go. Like, it is attainable. If you want it enough, and if you are willing to put in the work for it, you can get to a place where you can be happy doing what you do. But what will not happen is you are not going to show up and then not put in effort and get to where you want to go. I think that you can't go into it expecting to be, as a DJ, you can't go into it expecting to be the next Martin Garrix right off the bat, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wakes up one day having never touched DJ equipment and is suddenly the world's greatest DJ and producer. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes practice. I think what is attainable is that instead of setting your goal to where I'm going to be the next Martin Garrix, to set more attainable goals as you go through each level. So like for me, when I started DJing, my goal wasn't become a super famous circuit DJ. That was a long-term thing I wanted, but it wasn't my goal. My first goal was play a club. And after that, my next goal was consistently play clubs. And then from there, it was start my own event and my own brand. And then after that, it was play the festival for circuit DJs that is in my local area. And after I did that, that was actually a couple months ago during the pandemic, I did the virtual version of their festival. I had attained being well known in the circuit DJ field, which meant that for me, I could then set my next goal, which for me is to now tour and play more around the country. So I think what's important is to understand that there are different varying levels of success, and success isn't just measured in being super famous and well known. I'll take Lobo as an example. As Strypz said, getting lucky is about 50% of this field. It just is. I was not a furry before I went to Anthrocon in June, and Lobo would not have happened had I not gone to Anthrocon in June. July, sorry. Had I not gone to Anthrocon and DJ'd that, Lobo would have never been launched, and I would have never met Strypz, and who knows where my career would be. But because I went to AC and I DJ'd that event, that made me want to launch an event for pups and furries in DC. And because I knew some friends, we were able to get in with the DC Eagle and launch that event. But none of that would have happened if it had not been for a series of events that I would not have known were going to lead up to that in that moment. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I was on the stage DJing at that event that I saw this is something that I think I can market. And I did have a connection with the DC Eagle, so I could go back to them and be like, hey, I think this event can work. And when we launched it, we expected maybe 10, 15 people, and we got like 200. So a lot of it is just knowing how and when and where to do, but a lot of it is just pure luck. Like you gotta be consistent. And then the same thing with my DJ career. I was known in the DC area, but it wasn't until I played Soundcheck, which is one of our biggest local clubs in DC, that people started taking my career seriously. And the only reason I got booked there wasn't the reason I wasn't been booked there wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It wasn't that I wasn't trying hard enough, and it wasn't that I wasn't marketing hard enough. It's that the person who ran that event had no idea who I was. But at an event I was doing at the Eagle, that person just so happened to be running the event upstairs. And he happened to walk down while I was DJing. And he heard me, and he saw me wearing my pup hood. And he stayed down there, and he said, I like what this guy's doing. And he searched, and he found me. He said, come play Soundcheck. And after that, we've become good friends. So I think it's just realizing that sometimes it takes time. And there are different steps, but also to have realistic expectations.
Yep, definitely.
So Strypz, I want to come to you now real quick. And I think, one of the things that, and I think Elevative will agree with this, one of the hardest things about working in the arts regularly is trying to find a work-life balance between your career and also maintaining friendships and relationships, and, just trying to make sure your entire life doesn't become consumed just by your artwork or your DJ career or your videos or what have you. And Strypz, I know you're married.
Yes.
And so I guess I'll go to you first, which is, how does that balance work? Like, how do you know how to find the line to walk there?
So it's about one, just like in any relationship, it's about communication with your partner. And without that lack of communication, you won't know if something's wrong, because a lot of artists, we get hyper focused in our art, and we don't realize that we are alienating other people. And having that open dialogue and having that open line of communication with your partner and having them say, hey, I think you're spending a little bit too much time on this and I feel ignored, is very important. So you need to have a partner who supports you fully, but is also willing to realize, hey, we got together for a reason, and your career cannot supersede that. And it's a conversation that my wife and I have had, because when COVID hit, Ultra and I really started buckling down and building this Lobo brand. We took it, so Lobo had just started out as this club event And we then shifted Lobo to the digital space and started building it into more of a brand instead of just an event. And we were spending so much time doing that. And I did not realize that I was alienating my wife a little bit until she sat down and talked to me. And at first I felt really bad coming to Ultra and being like, hey, I need to step back a little bit. And then he looked at me and was just like, I'm going to slap you. Like the legitimate conversation we had, he's like, I'm going to slap you. He's like, your wife is just as important as I am, if not more so. Therefore, if you need time off, if you need time to step back, just talk to me. Let me know. And again, that's the other thing is if you are working with people that you are friends with, you can have those open dialogues and open conversations. But if you are working in a professional setting and you have a boss or somebody who is over you and you have deadlines, you still need to sit there and be open and honest with your boss if you feel like there is too much on your plate. Let them know that, yes, I'm very passionate about this, but still let them know this is affecting my life outside of the industry. And the other thing that you have to be aware of is that people around you, especially the bigger you get, will try to befriend you to get something out of you. So you have to be aware of the people that you let into your inner circle. And I'm not saying be leery of everybody, but just, keep your feelers out. And if you feel like somebody's only coming to you when they want to come see you DJ, or they're only coming to you when they want to be a part of your video to help launch their video career, or whatever the case is, it may be time to stop and start rethinking, are you really my friend, or are you just here to piggyback off of my success? So I know that was a big information dump all at once, but Elevative, what is your take on it?
Yeah, so I do. Yeah, that's kind of That's kind of an interesting topic because I do a lot of AV stuff. Like I really am into doing things for AV production eventing. That's currently what I'm working on expanding into, and like creating my own kind of small production company for small concert eventing and stuff in Minneapolis. And when it becomes really interesting, it becomes a really like interesting dynamic when you, it's like, where's the line between me in promotional mode when I talk to people versus me talking to people as friends? Because like there's so many people I know, via, because I do a lot of stuff in the AV world, and with you're talking to like people who are really good friends of yours, and they just so happen to be like promoters for events, or people that book people for events, and like you knew them before you even started like doing DJ stuff for them. And it becomes an interesting dynamic when you want to reach out and be like, hey, so let's talk about booking me for this event, versus like, because in the back of my mind I'm always thinking like, I don't want to be too pushy, because I don't want them to have like the tides turn from being like an acquaintance of a friend to just somebody to be like, oh, I need you to like get me into book things, which is kind of it kind of goes into the previous question of like, if you're really going to get anywhere, you kind of have to have contacts, but at the same time, it becomes an interesting dynamic, I guess, in that aspect. I guess one of the things that I probably suffer from is like, I'm very like, I don't want to be pushy in the aspect of I inherently don't want to be pushy, but like it's bad for me as, I guess, as a DJ career, because if I don't push at least a little bit to be like, hey, I have this really unique concept design, like you should really think about doing this, because versus like in the back of my mind I'm always thinking like, oh, I hope he doesn't think I'm just going to use him, and then have him just not be like a good friend anymore. And that's literally like everybody, I guess, in AV world once you get around to it. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. You just kind of have to, I don't know, I just play everything chill. That's just kind of my go-to, is just be chill.
So I can confirm. I think when I offered to have you come out for Lobo, that conversation with you was probably like very, very relaxed.
Yeah.
It was very much so like, hey, you want to come do this, and you weren't pushy about it at all. And I think it was good that it worked out that way, because one of the things I hate as a promoter more than anything else is like people that I'm just getting to know, if they come to me like, hey, can I do this event? Hey, here's my demo. Hey, here's like 16 demos. Hey, have you heard my latest demo? Here's my new demo.
Yeah, and then the thing is that I forget what the technical word to describe it is, but it's like you get into this thing where it's like, if so in that conversation where it's like I'm talking to you in a really chill manner, or you reach out, you're like, hey, I want to, like, do you want to do this? And be like, yeah, I'm like super chill about it, and it goes really well. But the thing is if you don't know anybody and you have to like start reaching out to promoters and stuff, the way that you get noticed is by being a little bit pushy, which can come off as being annoying in the first place. So it's kind of like,
Well, it's about
yeah,
striking. It's about striking the balance between being
yeah.
pushy and being personable, because
Mhm.
I think there's a way to be personable and still present what you want to in front of the people who may be able to help catapult you without being super pushy.
Yeah.
And it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah, you gotta like push, but you gotta be chill about it. Like, don't write a giant, like Word document of, hey, this is why you should hire me, something, just kind of, or book me or whatever. Just reach out and be like, hey, this is what I can offer that's unique, and I really like your guys' events. Maybe you could take a look at my stuff and see if you'd be interested.
So what I typically do, and I'll just tell you as a promoter, like the way I handle those messages is if somebody sends me like a 5 paragraph long message, I'm honestly probably not even gonna look at it.
Yeah.
Like that's just honestly
Yep.
as a promoter, like especially if it's someone I don't know, I'm just gonna be like, okay, maybe one day if it's like 3 in the morning and I can't sleep. But what I will look at is exactly what you said. If someone sends me like 3 to 4 lines of an elevator pitch, like, hey, I saw your event. Here's the style of music I play. Here's what I think I can do. Here's why I think I would be a good fit for your event. Then I'm more inclined to look at that. And then if I like what they've said, then I will ask them for a demo. Or if I have a friend who says, hey, I know this DJ, and maybe you could check out their stuff, I will. But what you definitely do not want to do when reaching out to promoters ever is send them like your entire resume in like paragraph form, because we're just too busy. But I agree, there is a certain level of pushiness that's required, because while I don't appreciate pushiness to say, I also don't appreciate complete lackadaisical like nothingness. So like I am less inclined to book a DJ if there's like no want to market themselves, or if there's too much of a want to market themselves. It is a very, very thin margin that you have to like walk. But speaking, go ahead. Elevative.
I think it's
Go ahead,
the
Strypz.
I think that both Elevative and I can attest to it. It's the same thing in the AV world, where like when you want to collaborate with somebody on a video, that you have to again walk that fine line of not being too pushy, especially if they are a content creator larger than you are. So it's again about approaching it in a personable way, and doing. I think you described it perfectly, an elevator pitch. But I know we have a couple of more pre-asked questions, and I know we've been spending a lot of time on this particular topic.
Yes. So elevative last word on this topic. Go ahead. If you have anything else to add.
Yeah, so I guess a good just way to think of it as, if you look at statistics of, almost if you send an email to anybody reaching out to like eventually get a set or to get a job or anything, you got to remember that those 3-4 sentences, small paragraph, the person that you're sending it to is going to judge your entire character based upon that. And 10% of that maybe will come after if they click on a link or something like that that you attach. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind, that understand who you're sending, what you got to understand, like who you're talking to, and you know what you kind of want to achieve. You know, like you know, Ultra said, a lot of people are busy, like they don't have a lot of time to read a long paragraph. If I see something that's, you know, more than 1 or 2 long paragraphs, I'm just gonna not read it. That because
Mhm.
that's just how a lot of people are. But you need to make sure to condense, you know, enough information down into that one paragraph that persuades them to be interested and to click on a link, which will lead them to like your website, and then you know, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So
So I've actually got some comments from Nick that I'm gonna read here on the topic we originally started this with was kind of work-life balance. So Nick says, when you work in the creative field, you're going to find a struggle that will exist in some form or a few, no matter what you do, the balance between what you do for yourself and what you do for other people. He says, I think the panelists will agree immediately. Do not ever give too much of yourselves for other people, even if it's your own audience. The idea that we'll give it all for the crowd is true in only certain ways, while in others it would be a sacrifice of the soul. You're not just a creative worker, you are a person, an individual. There is a dotted line between the artist or persona and who you actually are. And if you imagine those two halves in the Venn diagram, your time and effort is in the middle. What you use from that space is what you cannot get back, and that's something you've got to remember. You as a person still need to retain what grounds you. Otherwise, you as the artist cannot thrive or perform either. You also can't forget which side generated which. You are the base of the creative worker. You made that life, and there's always going to be a tug of war between what you want and why you do this, and what people want or think you want to be. Let me tell you straight up, other people trying to tell you who you are according to what they think you are is going to happen, and it is infuriating. It is disrespectful, and it's something you cannot allow them to succeed in doing. I don't mean to tell someone on Twitter to bend over and swallow their own tail all the way up to the base and then roll themselves back into the garbage stuff that they crawled out of, even if that's exactly how you feel. I mean, that you cannot personally look at what other people say about what your content, your art, your persona, or your work should be in place of what you actually care about and want to do. There will always be someone who thinks you should be chasing a trend. There will always be someone who wants you to do something where somebody else does. There will always be someone who tells you to go back to your old stuff. There will always be someone who tells you not to do this or do that or be this way or that way. You cannot tell them online that if they're such a genius with such brilliant perspective that they should go try and walk all the miles you've put into your shoes, but privately to yourself, you need to. Nobody knows who you truly are or actually respects who you will try to direct you as an artist into what they think you are or ought to be. And for the matter of fact, some people just don't get it, dude. Some really don't. One of the things I and others have had a laugh about is how this has gotten comments over time about Nick Nocturne that show they don't get it from the ego I put on, the stage presence, the way I speak, the way I write. If you're playing a character and you're all in, a lot of people who don't understand it are going to say things about about you that are exactly the point for the character or what your work is, but they'll be saying it as an insult. When these things happen, please laugh about it. Laugh, shake your head, and be thankful for the people who get it. Your work, your character, and your art is not going to be fully understood by everyone, but there are things that you don't deserve to have to explain at every turn. It's all just the territory of a performer and the creative.
Oh no, I 100% agree, and it is something that you and me preach every single time we do the DJ panel, is that at the end of the day, you have to take care of you, because you are a person, you are a human being, and you are not a wind-up toy. You are not a monkey that has been trained to do tricks. You're a human being. You have thoughts, you have emotions, you have feelings, and a lot of time your audience cannot separate the performer from the human being. And you see it all the time with like movie stars, where people will be running down the street because they're so enamored with this movie star. And I'm just like, they just want to go out and eat dinner. They're a human being just like you. Yes, they may be really, really good at what they do, but at the end of the day, they are a human being just like you. And you have to realize that the character that they play on TV is not who they are in their personal life. And so no, I 120% agree with everything that Nick wrote.
So what I'll add is, and Elevative and Strypz, you both, I think, can confirm this, is that, and one of the things he said in there was directly something that Nick and I have talked about. People assume that I am egotistical. They just do. Because part of being a DJ and being in a field where you're surrounded by people who are all doing what you're doing at the high level that you do it at, is you have to tell yourself you're confident, right? So if I walk into a promoter and I go and they say, tell me why I should book you, and I say, well, I think I'm an okay, decent DJ, they're not gonna book me. Like, they're just not. You have to believe when you're talking to a promoter that you are the best DJ that they have ever seen, because if you don't believe it, they're not gonna believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a difference between telling yourself that you deserve and belong and are where you are because of your work and carrying yourself with confidence and being egotistical. And people often confuse the two. Outside of the DJ world, and you and Elevative, I think, can confirm, I'm a very different person off stage than I am on stage.
Definitely.
I'm very,
definitely.
very, very different. Like, when you talk to me at an event, it's like a completely different person. But like in my regular life, I'm very quiet and reserved, and I'm very much so like the entire opposite of what DJ UltraPup and Jake Maxwell is. It's like polar spectrums. So, but because people only see me in the light of being a DJ, they just assume that that character that I'm playing is me. But the reason that character, that UltraPup, is so confident and egotistical is because I suffer from anxiety and stage issues. And in order to get over them, I have to constantly tell myself to get into a DJ mindset that I belong to be here. And the only way to do that is to tell myself I'm really, really, really good at what I do, and I need to convince myself of it before I go on stage. So I think that what Nick said is that people sometimes confuse what they think you are based off of the 2-3 hours they see you at an event for the person that you actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And Elevative, I think you can speak to that too, because you've played a bunch of events, and people, I assume, have figured that the DJ you is just you, but in reality, you are your own person with your own feelings and wants and needs as well.
Yeah, I'm boring IRL.
Can confirm.
See, he's boring IRL. I'm a hermit. I'm a straight up hermit.
Also can confirm. That's the thing, right? So people just assume that that the characters we are when we DJ is just who we are, but in reality, like, a lot of times it's the complete opposite of what that person's doing on stage. So on stage, I'm like really energetic. Off stage, I don't want to be around anybody. Like, I just want to stay in my home and like watch TV and not be bothered with the outside world. But on stage, I'm like everybody's best friend. Like, yeah, how's it going, bud? I remember you and remember you. And speaking of that, I actually had a question coming from the chat that I've been neglecting to get to because we've just been on a real big tangent here. But that's how do you maintain consistency when it comes to content creation? And do you involve schedules? And what do you do to kind of stay on track? And quick answers, because we're running out of time.
Yes, yeah,
I see
the timer. It is a mindset that you have to put yourself into. And if that means making yourself a calendar of, I'm going to do this every day on this week so that I can get content out at this particular time, then do that. And one of the things that has been proven by science is that after something is done between 30 and 90 days, it becomes a habit. So in order to get consistent, it's going to be a grind at first to be consistent. But once it becomes a habit, it'll become very, very easy to consistently upload, whether that's once a week, twice a month, whatever the case is, at least for YouTube. So that is that's the short of it. It can be a lot more detailed, but the short of it is make a schedule if you need to.
Yeah, so When I hear that question, I hear two things. Strypz got the first part of it, or the last part. I guess it depends on what you put first. Me being on the creative drive kind of thing right now is I forget what did I say in the question. How you get content that is
Do you
consistent.
maintain
So,
consistency, and how do
so
you do it with scheduling?
yeah, so you should maintain consistency in the sense of uploading and like creating content and stuff. But when you say consistency, there's also the part of like I guess what you're making as far as the art form and stuff. Um, you should maintain consistency, but you should always try and one up yourself. It like a little bit every single time, because then that shows your audience that you are putting in a lot of effort to try and become, you know, better, or try and do something new. You should push yourself to outside of the bounds of, you know, being exactly consistent in your content, but not so far to where like you're pushing away, you know, people that you just got from what you have been doing.
Very well said. Very well said. 10 out of 10 approve.
Now there's
So I think. Go
there's
ahead.
one question in here, and in the private chat that we have, that I do want to touch on real quick, and that's about equipment. You do not need the biggest and best equipment to produce content, whether that is in DJing, videography, or photography. You do not need the biggest and best equipment. Learn to work with what you have, and you may end up really surprising yourself what you can do with quote unquote cheap equipment if you tweak it just the right way, if you set up your lights in just the right way, and you learn your equipment, the ins and outs of it, very detailed, then not only is it easier to upgrade to more expensive and better equipment because you know what you're doing, but also then it kind of feels like a reward that you earned the bigger and better stuff because you pay, quote unquote, paid your dues with the lesser stuff. And even if you can never afford the more expensive equipment, you can make, quote unquote, cheap equipment look and sound professional. And I say sound professional because I'm also speaking of about in the DJ realm as well. You can play your butt off on a cheap controller the same way you could on a $3,000 controller. So whether it's videography, photography, or DJing, you are the artist. You control the equipment. Don't let the equipment control you.
Yeah, I guess a good example, or a good kind of touch off to that is, I remember 6 years ago when you try and get a DJ controller and they were like extremely expensive and there wasn't a lot of options out there. Right now in like what years? Yeah, 2020. Yeah, man, this year's just been going by. In 2020, like you can get like a $100 DJ controller that can do everything that like big DJ controllers can, and that's like amazing. Tiesto had a sponsorship with Denon and was using the SC 5000 primes, which, when they came out, they're like this, crazy, dual deck, they got all these crazy features and stuff. But when that ended, he went back to like bog standard, boring Pioneer players, because you can, there's so many like things you can do on simple hardware. And a lot of people like the simplicity of just like going back to, your normal decks. And experimenting with things like that. Of course, if you want to expand out of that and do crazy like sampling stuff, but yeah.
All right, so we're in the last 5 minutes now, so I want to get your guys' closing thoughts and parting words to everybody watching, and thank you guys for joining us, by the way. But before we do that, I do just want to quickly take a moment, and again, I'm sure you've been hearing this the entire weekend, but if you haven't already, please don't forget to vote. It is incredibly important. Go and do your civic duty, get the job done. If you have a mail-in ballot, don't send it in the mail, put it in a Dropbox, or go and vote in person at this point. check your states because most early voting places have actually ended at this point. So it's probably going to have to be a drop box, or it's going to have to be going to the polls on Tuesday. But regardless, go into your civic duty and vote. So with that in mind, Elevative, do you have any closing thoughts as we wrap up here?
Not really too much. Just I guess from somebody who has kind of been around the block a couple times, you should just always try and strive to become more unique in who you are and what you're doing, because that in return is what will really make you successful and happy at the same time.
Strypz, to you?
For me, don't be afraid to pursue your passion. I know that a lot of the stuff we've talked about in this panel can sound very discouraging and very scary, but if you are passionate about it, don't be afraid to pursue that passion, because if you are happy doing what you're doing, not only can it eventually turn into your full-time career, but also it's something that will continue to bring you joy over time. So don't get discouraged, whether you are a producer, a musician, videographer, photographer, DJ, just regular artist. Like if you do drawing commissions, pursue that passion if that's what you want. And you know, you're going to have your low moments. You're going to have your points where you get discouraged, but try not to stay there for too long, because, you know, you can most definitely bounce back and continue to strive towards what you want. And I do also agree with Elevative. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to break outside of your box just a little bit to stand out and be unique and different. So yeah, and I guess since we are also in closing, if you guys want to follow me and, you know, keep up with what I'm doing, you can find me over on YouTube as well as Twitter. My ats are Very Unusual on both Twitter and YouTube. Like I said, at the beginning of this video, I will have a video coming out very shortly on the YouTube channel. And then for the DJ stuff, if you just look up DJ 2 Unique, but it's spelled UNEEK. So DJ, the number 2, and then Unique with the spelling I just did, if you want to follow the DJ stuff. And if you actually go to my Twitter, I do have a link tree in there with all of my links, so it's a much easier access to find what you want to find. So yeah, this panel's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is
Elevative. Do you want to plug your links real quick in socials?
Yeah, so if you actually just go to the Furpocalypse Twitter page, there is something that they reposted that I posted about the studio. Otherwise,
Nope, you're key
down.
Your key is blurring it out.
Right.
All right.
Right there. Stop right there. There you go.
Yeah,
So
I'm not gonna.
guys,
It's kind of hard to spell, so. Yeah.
There you go. Screen cap it. So real quick in closing here as we wrap down, I just want to first off thanks to Strypz and Elevated for literally jumping in 25 minutes before this panel started with no preparation. He did a fantastic job, and we definitely didn't ball and draft him into the position. It wasn't like hey, you are a DJ, please come do this panel or anything. He definitely joined under his own free will. But in all seriousness, thanks to both of you. Thanks to everybody who watched. In closing, I just want to say a couple things, which is basically that we didn't really get to it, but there are going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs in your career in the arts. There just are. It comes with it, and you got to try to not get yourself too high or too low, because it's very easy when you are an artist to want to completely celebrate to the max every single high, but at the opposite end of that, beat yourself up to a complete and total pulp, so to speak, on the lows. And it's important to remember that it's a balance. So even though things may be going super well at one time and feel like they're stable, it's never actually ever fully stable. So you got to try to take it with a grain of salt and understand that there are ups There are downs. It's a balancing act. And to just try to enjoy the ride and remember the reason you were in it in the first place, which is to essentially produce art. It was not about money. It's not about fame. You do what you do because you are an artist and you love the craft.
Mhm.
And with that in mind, I think we are officially out of time, and I do not want to get yelled at. So
Yeah,
I
time's
want to
been
thank
yelled.
everyone. Yeah, I know he is. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we will. I am getting yelled at right now. Literally, there he is. Time suppression. By the way, before we get off, give this guy a round of applause whenever you see him. The man has literally been dying in the command center, along with his entire staff, who have done a fantastic job. So, like, if you see them at all or get a chance in the chat, please tell them thank you, because they are working incredibly hard to put on the convention, and it's not an easy job. With that in mind, I have been Ultra, and I've been joined by Strypz and Elevative, and thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of the convention. Bye, guys.
Night, guys.
See ya.